Desk, America's News Now.
Fall is around the corner, but the summer heat wave hasn't died. Just ahead, the unlikely part of the country bringing in the hottest temperatures of the year. Plus,
I'm the test case, which begs the question, how do you even come up with a charge against me if there's no law on this?
The verdict is in. One of Trump's former advisors learns his fate. And the week-long manhunt continues as a murderer on the loose evades capture once again.
Earlier today, we had a possible sighting of Cavalcante by a person in the vicinity of Longwood Gardens. A search of that area has been underway for the past few hours and continues at this time.
This is the National Desk, America's News Now. I'm Amira David. A dangerous heat wave continues in several parts of the U.S. More than 78 million Americans are under heat alerts today in the South and Northeast. Some towns in Massachusetts could have their hottest day of the year today. And the heat, it is impacting the U.S. Open tennis tournament in New York. They're keeping part of the stadium roof closed for another day. Top player Daniil Medvedev expressed frustration about the conditions, calling them dangerous, and said a player could die in the heat. The East Coast should get a break after today, but high temps are forecast in the southeast and southwest this weekend. All of it comes as we track yet another major weather event. Hurricane Lee quickly getting stronger, forecast to become a dangerous Category 5 hurricane within the next day. It's expected to move north of the Caribbean islands this weekend, and it could bring rough surf and rip currents to the East Coast as early as Sunday. A Louisville Metro Police Department officer is currently in critical but stable condition after being shot in the upper body while conducting a traffic stop. Police say the gunfire came from a nearby home. This led to a 6+ hour standoff at the residence that ended with at least 3 people being led away in handcuffs. Now, unfortunately, these ambush-style attacks, they happen more often than you would think. They're not totally uncommon. The National Fraternal Order of Police reports as of this past Monday, there have been 83 ambush-style attacks on law enforcement officers this year. That averages to 1 every 3 days. It's resulted in 101 officers being shot with 15 deaths. In total, 272 law enforcement officers have been shot in the line of duty so far this year, a slight increase over last year at this time, and a 24% and 25% increase compared to 2021 and 2020, respectively. While 34 policemen and women have been killed by gunfire this year, which is fewer compared to previous years. We move now to the manhunt for murder convict Danilo Cavalcante on the loose on day 8, today marking exactly a week since he first escaped from Chester County Prison in Pennsylvania. Authorities have reported yet another sighting of the 34-year-old near Longwood Gardens, where he was once spotted in the past. This is the 8th sighting of him since his escape. New today, we're learning local, state, and federal resources are involved in Cavalcante's capture as communities in the suburb near the prison remain on edge. A lieutenant on the case, pressed by a reporter who suggested Cavalcante is getting the better of police, had this to say.
We've chased people for a lot longer than this and ultimately brought them to justice. As I've said before, we're not going anywhere. We will eventually capture him, and when we do, he's going to prison. I don't consider that winning.
Former Trump advisor Peter Navarro, he has been found guilty of contempt of Congress. The jury deliberated for about 4 hours before convicting Navarro on 2 counts. Navarro was charged with failing to produce documents and failing to sit for a deposition with congressional investigators. Prosecutors argue he was not covered by executive privilege, while Navarro believes it's all part of a plan to, quote, get Trump.
Remember what's going on here. Remember how this started. This started with a weaponized House of Representatives and a partisan effort to put Trump and people who support him behind bars.
Navarro now faces 30 days to a year in jail for each count and a maximum fine of $200,000. The sentencing is set for January 12th. A new development in former President Trump's racketeering case. Trump says he might try to have the prosecution moved to federal court. The former president pleaded not guilty to charges that he tried to overturn Georgia's 2020 election results. He has until the end of this month to decide how to proceed. We're also waiting to hear a judge's ruling on whether former White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows can be tried in federal court. And happening at the same facility where Trump and 18 other defendants surrendered after the racketeering indictment, we're learning an inmate has died. It's the 10th inmate death so far this year. The DOJ is already investigating the jail system in response to multiple reports of inmate abuse and neglect. We turn now to a scathing report out of the Department of Justice against the state-run veterans' homes in New Jersey. The report says poor communication and a lack of staff competency is to blame for the rampant spread of COVID that ran virtually unchecked at multiple facilities in 2020. The state of New Jersey reached a $53 million settlement in 2021 to settle claims that more than 100 deaths happened in 2 VA homes, more than 200 residents dying in those facilities during the pandemic. Ohio Senator J.D. Vance's bill banning mask mandates in schools and transportation areas has failed to move forward. Today, Democrats opposed unanimous consent to the legislation, all but assuring the bill will not further be considered. 30 years to life, the sentence issued for That 70s Show star Danny Masterson. 4 months ago, the actor was convicted for the rapes of 2 women that happened 2 decades prior. The judge heard victim impact statements before determining the sentence today. Back in May, after the conviction, his defense team said it planned to appeal, but that appeal has yet to be filed. This week, the Biden administration announced it's canceling a batch of controversial oil and gas leases in Alaska's Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. The move is being celebrated by environmentalists and criticized by Republicans who claim it will discourage domestic oil production and increase gas prices. The National Desk's Atra El-Nashar has more.
More than 400,000 acres in a wildlife refuge in northeastern Alaska will be protected from oil and gas drilling, at least for now. The Biden administration's announcement this week that it's canceling 7 open Trump-era drilling leases is drawing praise from those who want to protect habitat for wildlife and disapproval from Alaska's Republican lawmakers. Senator Dan Sullivan claims the president is targeting his state, Senator Lisa Murkowski calling it unconscionable. The Energy Word's Dan Dicker is doubtful it will have any real impact on oil prices, largely because the leases did not prompt much drilling in the first place.
It's not really been a tremendous boon in terms of either production or revenues for either the oil companies or for Alaska, unfortunately.
Major oil companies passed on the opportunity to bid on the leases when they came on the market at the end of the Trump administration. Dicker says environmental protection concerns are just one reason many have gotten out of the Arctic altogether. Another is melting ice.
It actually makes it more difficult to solidify, to kind of anchor those rigs and get them in there.
On the other side of the world, a separate development that's much more likely to cause pain at the pump. Saudi Arabia and Russia announced they're extending oil production cuts of 1.3 million barrels per day through the end of the year. Average gas prices in the U.S. have been hovering around $3.80 per gallon for the past month.
Gas prices, they are ridiculous.
I think you'll see, again, triple-digit prices in oil and, $5.5 gasoline by the second quarter of 24.
Now, price jumps like the one Dan Dicker just described there would certainly set up energy costs to be a central issue in the 2024 election, which could harm President Biden, as he is the incumbent, of course. But more broadly, Amira, CNN just came out with a poll, and it shows that 64% believe that the president's policies have not improved the economy.
And Atra, do experts believe at this point there's anything that can be done to counter the Saudi and Russia production cuts? Because that's a huge pressure.
Right. There just isn't a clear solution unilaterally that the United States can do, even if there was more supply. I mean, remember the fact that the United States is on track to hit record high domestic oil output this year and next year, according to the Department of Energy. So it's not necessarily true that any supply that we could tap into now would really make a difference for prices at the pump, because oil is a globally priced commodity. There's also the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, which the administration's tapped into several times during the president's tenure. That's gotten mixed political reaction, to say the least. And they're still working on refilling that. So it's not necessarily convenient or easy or realistic to tap into it right now. And I've talked to administration officials after other production cut announcements from Saudi Arabia, and they just don't seem eager to tap into it once again. So really no clear answer because, again, oil is priced on a global market.
Yeah, sure to be a talking point as we head into the election year. Atrel Nashar reporting live in D.C. for us. Thank you.
Thanks.
President Biden is on his way to the G20 summit in India. The group of 20 global economic powerhouses will discuss working in partnerships. Discussions will center around economic challenges, climate change, and security. After the summit, he's off to Vietnam to work on strengthening ties there. The last trial over the alleged 2020 plot to kidnap Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer continues now for its 11th day. The defense began presenting their arguments today after the prosecution rested yesterday. One of the three men charged, Eric Molitor, testified in his own defense. He said he saw Whitmer's COVID-19 restrictions as a slippery slope to laws that infringe on rights.
Get out of the truck!
A Salisbury, North Carolina police officer is being praised for his heroic actions this week. The police department released this video of Lieutenant Corey Brooks rescuing a non-responsive truck driver from a burning tractor trailer on a highway moments before it burst into flames. He pulled the man out of the truck and another person came over and helped get him to the other side of the road. An ambulance then took him to the hospital. An American researcher is trapped more than 3,000 feet deep in a cave in Turkey. Nearly 200 doctors, paramedics, and experienced cave explorers are now working to hoist out 40-year-old Mark Dickey. A new video shows Dickey thanking them for saving his life. He started experiencing gastrointestinal bleeding and is unable to leave the cave on his own. The rescue could take up to 3 weeks. Coming up, as the 2024 presidential election approaches, new poll numbers suggest potential trouble ahead for both Biden and Trump. And most states do not require school buses to include seatbelts, but the recent death of an Ohio student is igniting calls for change. Then a Texas police department drawing criticism after telling crime victims to call 311, not 911. We'll explain both sides when we come back. The auto workers' strike probability jumped today as United Auto Workers President Shawn Fain called a counteroffer made by GM to union demands insulting. The two sides met today in hopes of reaching a deal before next week's September 14th deadline. GM offered a 10% wage hike, but the union is seeking at least 40%. Stellantis, formerly known as Chrysler, says it is preparing its counteroffer by the end of the week. A not-so-welcome poll for President Biden. According to a CNN survey just released, 2/3 of Democrat-leaning voters do not want Biden as their 2024 nominee. And let's take a look at that further here. About half of respondents, 49% in fact, they say that Biden's age was their biggest concern. Biden's mental sharpness and health, that was the second biggest concern, that coming in at 7% for each. On the flip side, 75% of those same respondents said they approved of his overall job performance. 81% said they believed that Biden cared about people like them. And as the 2024 presidential campaign heats up, we're seeing in some ways the rules of being a candidate have shifted. Old so-called political taboos are no longer, and questions about the two-party system are mounting. But are we ready for a third-party candidate? That's always the question. National correspondent Christine Frizzell takes a closer look.
It's good to be almost home.
They took the gloves off, and we can say whatever we want.
It is a political puzzle. How to change the accepted rules of a game Americans have played by for so long.
I guess we're up 50 points in Iowa, 5-0.
And yet a recent poll found 56% of voters don't want Trump to run for re-election. 59% don't want Biden to. One reason why groups like No Labels are floating the idea of a third-party candidate.
I think the people basically have spoken loud and clear that they're not happy with the two choices and only two choices.
In 1992, Ross Perot set what many see as a high bar for a third-party candidate, capturing 19% of the vote.
Ross Perot combined a likable personality that reminded people of someone in their own family, with a record of very great business success, and also a bunch of positions that were hard to characterize. They weren't especially left or right.
A brand new USA Today Suffolk University poll found registered voters unlikely to go to the polls back Trump over Biden by nearly 20 percentage points, while 22% are undecided. When asked what it would take to get them to vote in November, 27% said a better choice or a candidate that I like.
It very well may be the first time in our history where the American public is really hungry for something like this.
Others are skeptical, given the unpopularity of the top two candidates and the fear of, quote, throwing away their vote.
They may want their vote to count, either not necessarily to elect a particular candidate, but to make sure one of the candidates does not get elected.
There are some additional hurdles for third-party candidates, including our election laws, which make it difficult to get on the ballot in most or all 50 states. Not to mention the massive fundraising machines and volunteer networks that come with the Republican and Democratic parties. I'm Christine Frizzell, reporting for the National Desk, America's News Now.
Christine, thank you. The number of Americans who filed for unemployment last week, it fell to its lowest level in 7 months. The Labor Department says there were 216,000 jobless claims filed, down 13,000 from the week before. This comes after the Labor Department reported the unemployment rate rose to 3.8% in August. That's still considered low by historical measures. In Pennsylvania yesterday, 52 students and 2 adults were taken to the hospital when a school bus was hit in a head-on collision with a tow truck. 2 of the students remain under hospital care, while all of the others have been released with minor injuries. Earlier this year, 1 child died in a bus crash on the first day of school in Ohio. The vast majority of states, 42 including Ohio, have no requirement that school buses include safety belts. Spotlight on America looks into the tragedy in Ohio that is igniting calls for change.
Oh my God, the bus is on its side. Oh my God,
An Ohio community is mourning an unthinkable loss. On the first day of school, an 11-year-old boy was killed, thrown from a school bus when it was hit by a minivan just minutes from its destination.
It's not something that we should have to go through on the first day of school, 2 minutes away from school.
23 children were injured. Reminders of a community's pain now sit on the side of the road. It's all too familiar for Dawn Prescott. She was a school chaperone on a horrible day in 2001 when the school bus she was riding on crashed in Nebraska, killing her 14-year-old son.
Everybody just kind of ended up, being thrown into the ceiling, thrown into each other, and then landing in a heap when the bus finally landed.
Do you believe if there were seatbelts in that bus, it would have made a difference?
Do I believe? I know it would have made a difference because everyone would have been contained in their seat.
Right now, there's no federal requirement for safety belts on school buses. Crashes are rare, with the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, or NHTSA, saying less than 1% of all traffic deaths involve kids on school transportation vehicles. But accidents do happen. Just this past November, 16 people were hurt in this crash in Indiana. And in 2020, this terrible accident involving a school bus in Tennessee claimed the lives of the bus driver and a 7-year-old girl and injured 7 children. The National Transportation Safety Board, or NTSB, wrapped up its investigation of that Tennessee crash last fall and concluded that seatbelts could have protected the students on board. It's an added safety feature that Jane Terry with the National Safety Council believes should have happened a long time ago.
We know for years, decades, that seatbelts save lives.
We discovered at least 32 states have considered legislation about seatbelts on school buses since 2007. Only 8 have passed laws.
And unfortunately, too many of our safety laws are written in blood, and these are the results of crashes that happen in certain states that cause those legislatures and school boards to act.
NHTSA has said that the unique design of school buses already provides the best safety protection on the road through what's known as compartmentalization, with closely spaced seats and energy-absorbing seat packs. But Jane Terry told us it's a design that has its limits.
That compartmentalization does not work when buses are hit from the side. And we've seen that in a few investigations that the NTSB has done.
We found the decision for many rural and cash-strapped districts often comes down to money. With the cost of tragedy in clear view, local, state, and national leaders are examining what some believe could be a life-saving investment.
What do you think the price of inaction is?
It's the increased risk of injury, liability. It's not a matter of if it's going to happen, it's a matter of when.
For Spotlight on America, I'm Chris Daniels.
In your neighborhoods, we've got reporters covering issues that matter most to you. We're taking the pulse of America. In California, the Redding Regional Airport is looking to expand more and more, and the possible new destination is Denver, Colorado. Direct flights there is something that has been in the works for a while, so why haven't we seen flights offered yet? The Redding Regional Airport manager says there is one factor causing the delay.
What's taken so long is it's not that the number of gates, that's fully developed at Denver right now. The aircraft, the airline has all the aircraft needed. The only thing that's missing is the air crew, pilots. Pilots is the number one thing that we're waiting for. I'm hopeful that this will be more in the near future than it is in the long.
They're also looking for more pilots to help fill the gap. Texas Governor Greg Abbott is calling out a tweet from the Austin Police Department that directs victims of bank-related robberies to use an alternative emergency line. APD tweeted a clarification that victims of robberies should call 911 and said if you went to the bank and someone broke into your car, then call 311. A city council member reacted to the original message.
I believe it was poorly executed and serves as an area of opportunity for the city to massage their messaging a little bit.
She says the Austin Police Department is down about 350 positions. The Tip City, Ohio community is shocked and outraged after a school board member was seen giving a Nazi salute to the former board president during a board meeting. The board member said she was using it as a sarcastic gesture because the president had been, quote, acting like a dictator. The Anti-Defamation League said it was disheartening and only contributes to a growing problem. Coming up, teen tennis star Coco Gauff is gearing up for her next match that could bring her one step closer to a major title. That's next. Teen phenom Coco Gauff is chasing her first career major title and tonight could get one win closer, now squaring up for her first ever semifinal spot at the U.S. Open. She becomes the first American teen to do so since Serena Williams. She's set to play tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern against number 10 Karolina Muchova. Best of luck, Coco. And for football fans around the country, today is somewhat of a holy day. The 2023 NFL season officially kicks off with reigning Super Bowl champions Kansas City hosting the Detroit Lions. It all gets started at 8:20 Eastern from Arrowhead Stadium. Happy watching to all of you. That does it for this edition of the National Desk. We do invite you to join us again this evening for more coverage of America's top stories. Just check your local listings for time. I'm Amira David. Thank you so much for watching.